right, we're just waiting for some video stuff to get live here. My name is David Monaco, for those who don't know me. Help out kind of behind the scenes with the Santa Barbara Track Club on the media and marketing side. And very, very happy and humbled to play the MC tonight. We have some incredible guests here this evening, late afternoon here in Santa Barbara, so excited to get this underway. Let me check with Casey. Where's Casey at? Are we live back there? We're good? Okay. All right, so as many of you know here, as many of you know, we are all here for the Santa Barbara Track Club as a fundraiser this evening, celebrating the Sam Adams Week of events. We've had an incredible, really, it's turned into a week. This is the 5th annual Sam Adams that we've done. And the Sam Adams Week of Events was sort of a brainchild of Josh Priester, who's the executive director of the Santa Barbara Track Club, standing back there. And I know some of you here in attendance know who Sam Adams is. Some of you do not. And Sam Adams was a coach in the multi-events, decathlon, heptathlon. He was the coach actually at UC Santa Barbara, the director of track and field there for, gosh, a few decades. His nickname was The Rock. He not only influenced generations of athletes from Bill Toomey to Bruce Jenner to you name it, but also influenced a generation of coaches as well. And one of the coaches actually that helped sort of foster the environment that is here today is Harry Morrow, which is the coach of Ashton and Breanne Eaton. Also, I know he's had a huge influence on Josh Priester as well. So the spirit of Sam Adams has really lived on through the generations of athletes and coaches, and now through this Sam Adams Combined Events Invitational Week of Events. So we actually started on Wednesday with a free youth clinic that was sponsored in part by Brian Sons Jewelers and Santa Barbara Athletic Association. And thank you very much. And then, of course, we had a lot of the collegiate and professional athletes out Friday and Saturday. And this year, we decided to put on an inaugural community and youth meet. So we had a couple people out doing the mile on Friday night, and a couple adults and masters athletes doing the 5K on Saturday morning. But we had about 100, if not over 100, youth track and field athletes from Santa Ynez, from Ojai, from throughout Santa Barbara County that attended the inaugural Try Challenge that we held. So it was really, really neat to see the Sam Adams grow to not just be about the professional athletes or the collegiate athletes, but really become a community event. And like any good track team, Josh and many of us realized to grow this event, we needed the help of many people in the community to pull this off and to continue to grow the Sam Adams events week. And so I want to thank a couple of those who helped put on tonight's event, but also helped spearhead a lot of the events that happened during the week. Nancy Martz was one of them. Mindy Wolf Lyons also, thank you. Casey Peretti, who also put together this great slideshow. And Jim Sloan as well, thank you very much. And then we had a number of incredible sponsors. Abeo has actually sponsored not only Barbara Nwaba, but the entire track club. They are one of the Walking Company brands, running shoe company. You can find them at the Walking Company, a lot of the malls here at Paseo Nuevo. Abeo has been an incredible supporter of the Santa Barbara Track Club in helping us get off the ground and kind of take the Santa Barbara Track Club to the next level, especially on the professional side. We also have Santa Barbara Running Company and their new apparel company called Rabbit, which is launching in just a couple weeks. So both Monica and Joe DeGreens, can't thank them enough for supporting the Santa Barbara Track Club over the years. Vining Construction and Butler America as well, thank you for the support of tonight's event. And then, of course, the very, very important Figaro Mountain Brewing Company and Sanford Winery. We have Steve Fennell, the head winemaker at Sanford here in attendance. Thank you very much for the delicious wine. For the runners out there, there's going to be the second annual Vintners Foundation run is going to happen on July 23rd out at the Sanford property. So definitely look to check that out. So with that, what we're doing tonight is we have 4 incredible athletes. We have Jeff Farrell, 1960 Olympic 2-time gold medalist in swimming, local resident of Santa Barbara. He may have sold your house, real estate agent here for quite some time. We also have Breanne Tyson-Eaton, who is the recent gold medalist in the World Championship Indoor Pentathlon here. And Ashton Eaton, the world record holder in the decathlon and reigning gold medalist. And of course, Santa Barbara's own Barbara Nawaba, who's the 2015 U.S. heptathlon champion and was 4th place at the World Indoor Championships just a few weeks ago as well. And so we're going to have we're going to bring each of them up individually, have a conversation, ask some Q&As with all of you, but we're really just looking to have a good conversation with them, so you get to know who they are and what makes them tick, and hopefully inspire all of you. And what's funny is I was going through this and putting together bios, I realized, it's really humbling being up here with this incredible caliber of athletes. But I started chuckling because I don't know if there's ever been, and maybe there's been in one room, but here in Santa Barbara we have 2 athletes that have also been in ESPN The Body magazine. And so with that, I'm actually going to introduce the first one, Jeff Farrell, Santa Barbara's own 1960 Olympic gold medalist. You can come up to the stage here. Thank you. Go. Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. We're good? All right, so let me start with a small bio of Jeff. Jeff was born in Detroit, Michigan. He was raised in Wichita, Kansas. We were actually talking, interestingly, here we are, Santa Barbara Track Club. We're talking about running. We're talking about the sport of athletics, and we have a swimmer up here. So here's one piece that's really, really interesting. His swimming coach that inspired him to the heights that he got to in swimming actually left the sport of swimming and coached another athlete at your high school, Jim Ryan, and inspired him to break 4 minutes. You actually had, if we want to start there, you had a really interesting story about how your coach talked Jim into thinking that he was much better than a 4:18 miler.
Jim was not a very good runner. He didn't even make the junior high track team. But as a sophomore at my high school east, he ran the mile, and after his 4th mile, he was on the bus on the way back from the meet to Wichita, sitting next to his coach, Bob Timmons. And Bob asked Jim how fast he thought he could run a mile. Jim had just run one in 4:21. And he said, well, I think I could probably run 4:18. And Bob Timmons said, Jim, you're wrong. You can run a lot faster than that. You can break the East High record, which at that time was 4:08. He said, in fact, Jim, I think you can be the first high schooler to break 4 minutes. This is a conversation that took place when his best time was 4:21. The next year, he did a 3:59. And he ran, he later ran the next year 3:53 or 55. He ran under 4 minutes 5 times as a high schooler. And his 3:53 that was in a high school event is a record that held for, I think, 36 years. So Jim Ryan, my coach felt it was worthwhile to switch from swimming, but he really was, a good swimming coach, although I can't resist telling this story. He was the coach my senior year. He was also a track coach and cross-country coach. And when I showed up, found out we had a new coach, and also found out that my new coach in swimming didn't know anything about swimming. My father and I contributed what little knowledge we had. It was a lot more than what he had. And at our first meet that year, with the perennial champions of the state in Coffeyville, I beat the local star in the 220. They announced the time and result and went on to the next event. And my father got down from the stands, walked over to Bob Timmons and said, "Bob, I think Jeff just tied the national high school record." And Bob looked at him and said, "Really?" At that point, my father reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the guide that has records and results and the dog-eared page of high school records. Showed it to him, and Bob said, "Gee, Mr. Farrell, you're right. What do we do now?" And my father reached into his vest pocket, took out a piece of paper and unfolded it and gave it to Bob. And at the top of it was printed application for National Interscholastic Swimming Record. And I think my father probably had a smile on his face when he gave it to Bob. Anyway, that helped us establish a nice relationship with us. Richard Quick was one of the most famous and talented swimming coaches, 5-time Olympic swimming coach. He was a swimmer with me on Bob Timmons' first Wichita Swim Club team in 1954. And Richard said that Bob Timmons was the reason that he went into coaching and why he felt so strongly that it was important to help young athletes. Sorry, that was a long story.
No, that's fine. The common threads of Olympic sports is always really interesting, and that's one of the more unusual and special ones I think I've heard. When did you first sort of understand or know that you were a very competitive person? Or when did you have in your mind that you could go after national records or even compete collegiately for the University of Oklahoma? When was that through your dad, or what mentors did you have beyond your dad and Coach Timmons, if there were any, that led you to have that belief of having the competitive spirit and kind of taking it to the next level beyond just being a high school swimmer?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that, but my father was my first coach, but he didn't know how to swim. He bought a book and gave me some workouts when I was 11 or 12, or maybe 10. And my first swimming competition was at the YMCA, a little 20-yard pool at the local country club. But that was just to get, I mean, it was a big thrill to get little medals. But my father really knew that he wasn't the right one to coach me. He sent me to a summer camp the summer before my senior year, which is why I was able to know so much about swimming with the coach who didn't. This camp was run by and owned by the 1952 U.S. Olympic swimming coach, Matt Mann, who's also just about to retire from Michigan. And I didn't really know much about the Olympics. In 1952, I was 15. The Olympics were not yet televised on a regular basis every 4 years. I didn't read the sports pages much. Maybe some of you other older people will remember there were newsreels in the movies, and maybe there was something about the Olympics there, but I didn't really know much about the Olympics. But this coach really gave me some good basic swimming technique training, and started giving me and also he had some Olympic stars who were there at the camp that summer, and so I rubbed elbows with some people who had been good swimmers, and I started learning a little bit about national competition. When my first swimming meet was when I was 12, a real meet, an AAU meet, and that was in Oklahoma in a 50-meter pool. And I was used to swimming in about a 16-yard pool. It looked kind of like a lake to me. That's when there were two age groups, junior and senior. And you were a junior until you turned 16. And I was 12, so I was swimming against older, stronger swimmers, but probably as important, they probably had been working out hard and knew how to work out. Anyway, I don't really remember how I did in that meet, but I do remember that meet very well because it was kind of scary. And I was a diver then also, and my best memory of the meet is my mother telling me afterward that she felt sorry for me because I looked so skinny up on the diving board. But, so that was when I was 12. Then high school, I told you about the coach there, and I went off to college. Do I have time to talk a little bit? There was a chief, a Navy petty officer who was at the Naval Air Station in Norman, Oklahoma, coaching the team there. And he recruited me and offered me a full scholarship. When I went down the next fall, I found out he had been fired as the coach. And the football trainer for the football team at the University of Oklahoma, under Bud Wilkinson, whose name will ring a bell for some people, he set a national record of consecutive conference victories. I think it was 54 games in a row. So football was important to this trainer. And he didn't know much about swimming anyway, but we didn't see him very much. But in freshman year, we didn't have competition anyway. We weren't allowed to compete in NCAA. So I went off to Matt Mann's camp the next summer to work on my swimming because he was a real expert. While I was there, somebody sent me a letter. I got a letter from somebody from Oklahoma that had a clipping from the newspaper that said that the swimming coach at Oklahoma was no longer the trainer of the football team. The new coach was the fired basketball coach, who also had no swimming background. And I told Matt Mann about this. I remember our conversation very well. Matt had just retired from the University of Michigan. And I told him, Matt, I think I'm going to transfer to Michigan. I think I'm a better swimmer than I'm doing, and I think I need some real coaching. And this is really disappointing. And Matt, who had just retired from Michigan, and I thought he would encourage me to go to Michigan, because he had before when he was the coach there. He said, son, he called all the boys son. He said, son, before you call the coach at Michigan to transfer, when you go home to Wichita, I want you to call Bud Wilkinson, who was the athletic director as well as the football coach. You go down to Norman and see Bud Wilkinson, and you tell him that Matt Mann will come to Oklahoma to coach. And so I called Bud, and he agreed to see me the next morning. I drove down there, and he was very gracious to me, and he was the most famous person in Oklahoma at that time. And I told him that the swimming team was very disappointed in his choice of coaches. I don't think I put it exactly that way. But I told him that we deserved a real coach and that we had a chance to get the last U.S. Olympic swimming coach, the most recent one. And he listened to me. He didn't know who Matt Mann was, but I explained it, and then I went home. And a couple of weeks later, I got a phone call from Matt saying he got the job.
Wow.
So for my last 3 years in college, I had an Olympic swimming coach, and I improved a great deal. But I have to say I was ambitious, but back in the mid-50s, we didn't know much about really hard training like you runners and like the swimmers have to do today to be good, because there's a lot of competition. And so I didn't really train as hard as I would have if I had been swimming 20 years later. I graduated, I had done fairly well in college, I was pretty happy. I got several third places in national meets. I went into the Navy, and when I was stationed on a ship in Hawaii, I got a letter from the Navy asking me if I'd like to go to New Haven to join a handful of swimmers to train for the Pan Am and Olympic trials. And at that time, this is to show you kind of where I was in my thinking about swimming. I started scuba diving when I was fairly young, and I was thinking, I think I'll go into UDT. And then I got this letter from Yale, from the Navy, about going to Yale, and I thought about it, and I said, no, I think my swimming life is over. I'm going to go into UDT. So I applied to UDT, and I didn't really think that much about what that D meant. UDT is Underwater Demolition Team. They were the predecessors of the SEALs. Anyway, I didn't hear back from them for my application. I think my skipper maybe didn't forward it on. But I got another letter from the Navy asking me if I would reconsider and join the group at Yale. And I said, yes, I think I will. So I was sent to Yale, and there is where all the difference was. The coach had been a coach at Yale since the 19-teens. He knew swimming better than anybody. He was a legend in swimming already. He had just retired and was happy to have a handful of Navy swimmers to coach. And his bodybuilding program made me strong. And I had never done exercises like that. Man didn't believe in dry land exercises, even though he was a great coach. But Kipeth did, and he always had his swimmers do his own series of calisthenics and weights and things before they got in the water. I got really strong and really fast, and Bob Kipeth's coaching was completely responsible for my success.
So I'm definitely getting a sense now of where some of your stubbornness has come from, because for those who might not know the story, and I do encourage everyone, Jeff does have a great book called My Olympic Story, Rome 1960, that recently came out. It's a couple years old?
Yeah, 2 years.
2 years old? Just before, 6 days before, Jeff had appendicitis. And for those of you who may have had appendicitis in your adulthood versus being a child, the recovery process is much longer. Of course, you were hell-bent on competing, which you did.
I wasn't hell-bent on it. The first day of the operation, I cried a lot. And finally accepted what had happened, and I felt sorry for myself the whole day. And that evening, Coach Kipeth, had taken us down to Detroit for the trials. And he said, Jeff, you're in such good shape, you ought to start your rehabilitation right away. And there's a little exercise room down the hall, a physical therapy room. I'll show you what you can do there. He gave me some exercises, mainly just lifting my legs in bed, work on my core muscles. He said to walk around the hospital as much as I could. This is day one. And he said, we'll get you started in the weight room tomorrow. And he said, oh, by the way, I I found out there's a swimming pool in the basement of the hospital. And he said, if you feel like it, we can maybe go in there, maybe not tomorrow, the day after though. And I looked at him sort of like this, like, what are you talking about? And he saw my look, and he said, look, Jeff, you're in the best shape of your life. There's no reason why you shouldn't keep your condition, work on it, and this is the way to do it. He said, you don't have anything better to do here. And I said, I think I shrugged my shoulders, at least mentally, and said, you're right, I don't. So he got me in doing these things and got me into the pool. The first day I could barely walk in the pool. The next day I was able to dog paddle, but each day I made progress and looked like I was going to be able to swim. And this is too long a story, but it was because of Bob Kippett that I was able to make the comeback.
So before we bring up our next speaker, I will mention Jeff has actually gone on to break many Masters records, and if you think it might have just been youthful athleticism that got him to the 1960 Olympics, well, in 2005 he had an aortic valve replacement, and 18 months later broke 3 national Masters records. So Jeff has done a history of doing this. And Jeff's actually the only swimmer, I believe still, who has been inducted into the International Swimming Hall of Fame and the Masters Swimming Hall of Fame. So very, very long career of competition in the pool, and of course, fantastic that you're a Santa Barbara local. So I appreciate you being here.